28 men stood on the ice and watched their only way home disappear. No explosion. No dramatic last stand. Just a slow, terrible tilt, and then silence. The ship that had carried them to the bottom of the world slipped beneath the black Antarctic surface and was gone. In less than a minute, on November 21st, 1915, they were more than 1,200 miles from the nearest human being. No radio signal would reach them. No rescue ship was coming. The temperature was dropping toward -30, and they had just watched their shelter, their warmth, and their last connection to the world above vanish into the dark water beneath their feet. They had nothing left but each other. What they did next took 634 days. It had started with a dream. In the summer of 1914, a British explorer named Ernest Shackleton placed an advertisement in a London newspaper. He was looking for men willing to join an expedition to Antarctica, the last great crossing no one had ever completed. The response was immediate. Thousands of men applied. Shackleton chose 27 of them carefully. Scientists, sailors, a carpenter, a photographer, a doctor. Men of different backgrounds, different skills, different temperaments, bound together by one thing: the willingness to go somewhere most men would never dare. The world around them was already falling apart. In August 1914, as the Endurance left London, Europe was sliding into the First World War. But these 28 men turned their backs on all of it and sailed south, toward something harder, colder, and more unknown than any battlefield. Shackleton was their leader, 40 years old, broad-shouldered, calm, and deeply serious about one thing above all else: bringing every single one of his men home alive. Those who sailed with him said he had a gift for reading people. He knew when a man was struggling before the man himself did. On January 19, 1915, the ice closed around the Endurance completely. The ship stopped moving, not temporarily, not for a day or a week. The ice locked around her hull like a fist, and she did not move again. Shackleton gathered his men and told them plainly they were stuck. He then did something that would define the entire expedition. He gave every man a job. He maintained meal times. He organized games on the ice. He encouraged the crew to care for the sled dogs, to exercise them, to play with them, to maintain the small daily rhythms of normal life in a place where nothing was normal. He understood something deeply. The greatest danger to his men was not the cold. It was despair. And despair grew fastest when men had nothing to do. For 9 months, the Endurance drifted, trapped in the ice. 9 months of darkness, of shrinking rations, of endless waiting. Then, in October 1915, the ice changed. The pack began to shift and press. Slowly at first, new sounds at night, deep groaning from below the waterline. Then faster. The hull of the Endurance began to splinter under the pressure. On October 27, 1915, Shackleton gave the order to abandon ship. The men pulled 3 small lifeboats and as many supplies as they could carry onto the ice. They set up camp and watched their ship die around them. It took 3 more weeks. On November 21st, the Endurance finally gave out. Her bow rose slightly as if taking one last breath, and then she went under, stern first, quietly, in less than a minute. Shackleton watched her go. Then he opened his diary and wrote, "Ship and stores have gone, so now we'll go home." 6 words. No panic. No despair. Just a statement of intent that cut through the darkest moment of the entire expedition like a blade. They had lost their ship. They still had a direction. They were going home. The crew set up a more permanent camp on the drifting ice floe. They converted the lifeboats into shelters. They rationed food carefully. They melted ice for drinking water. The temperature dropped to -30. Blizzards came and went. The ice groaned beneath them constantly, reminding them that the ground they stood on was not ground at all. The hardest moment came quietly, without drama. Shackleton made the decision to shoot the sled dogs. There was no way to feed them. There was no way to take them in the boats. It was a practical decision, but it cost something. The dogs had been companions through the worst months on the ship. On April 9, 1916, the ice floe cracked. It broke apart beneath their feet, a sudden, violent fracture that gave them no time to think. They launched the 3 lifeboats into the open Southern Ocean. After 9 months trapped, after 5 months on the ice, They were finally moving. For 7 days they rowed and bailed and shivered. The waves were enormous, 40, 50 feet high, walls of black water that blocked the sky. Men took turns sleeping in the hulls of the boats, soaked through, unable to get warm. Ice formed on the oars. Skin cracked and bled from the salt and cold. On April 15, 1916, they sighted land, Elephant Island, desolate, rocky, battered by wind and storms on all sides, uninhabited, no shelter waiting for them. But it was land, solid, real, unmoving land, for the first time in 497 days. When the boats scraped onto the beach, men fell to their knees. Some pressed their faces into the rocks. Some wept without sound. One man was reported to have eaten dirt from the shore, just to feel something real beneath him, after nearly 500 days of ice and ocean. It was not safety, but it was ground, and for a moment, that was everything. Shackleton did not rest long. He looked at the island around him, remote, storm-lashed, invisible to any shipping lane, and he understood the truth immediately. No rescue would ever come to Elephant Island. If they were going to survive, someone would have to go and get help. On April 24, 1916, Shackleton departed with 5 men in the James Caird, the largest of the 3 lifeboats, 22 feet long, modified by their carpenter McNish to handle open ocean conditions. Their destination, South Georgia Island, a whaling station 800 miles away, across the Drake Passage, the most violent stretch of ocean on Earth. 800 miles, in a 22-foot wooden boat, through the Southern Ocean in late autumn, when storms were building and the seas ran at their worst. 17 days. For 17 days they fought waves described as moving mountains, walls of water so large they hid the sky. Worsley navigated by the stars with a handheld sextant, squinting through the spray and the cloud. In 17 days he had only 4 clear sightings of the sky, 4 moments of clarity across 800 miles of ocean. And yet, on May 8, 1916, South Georgia Island appeared through the mist directly in front of them. They had made it. But the ordeal was not over. They had landed on the wrong side of the island. The whaling station at Stromness was on the opposite shore, across a spine of mountains that had never been crossed. No map existed. No one had ever attempted it. 3 of the 6 men, Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean, were in any condition to attempt the crossing. On May 19, 1916, the 3 men set out on foot into the mountains. They walked for 36 hours without stopping, through glaciers, over ridgelines. Down slopes they descended by sitting and sliding, not knowing what was at the bottom. At one point, trapped on a ridge as night fell and the temperature dropped, they made a decision. They could not stop. Stopping meant freezing. So they sat together on the ridgeline, coiled the rope beneath them like a sled, and launched themselves down the unseen slope into the darkness below. Whatever was at the bottom, they would find it together. They landed in soft snow. They kept walking. On the morning of May 20, 1916, 3 men stumbled into the Stromness whaling station. The workers there stared at them in silence. The 3 figures in front of them were ragged, blackened by frostbite, their hair long and matted, their faces barely recognizable as human. One of the station workers later said he had never seen men who looked like they had come from somewhere no person was supposed to return from. Back on Elephant Island, 22 men were still waiting. Frank Wild, Shackleton's second-in-command, had kept them alive. Every morning he woke the men and told them to roll up their sleeping bags. "The boss may come today," he said. Every morning, for months. 3 times Shackleton organized rescue ships. 3 times the ice blocked the approach. 3 times he turned back, and immediately began organizing a 4th attempt. On August 30, 1916, 105 days after Shackleton had left, a ship appeared on the horizon off Elephant Island. Shackleton stood at the bow. He counted every single one. 22 men, all alive. All 28 men who had sailed from London in 1914 came home alive. After 634 days, after a ship lost, a continent abandoned, an ocean crossed in a rowboat, and a mountain range climbed in the dark, every single one. Years later, people would ask what had made it possible. How had 28 men survived what should have killed all of them? The answers were never dramatic. There was no single moment of brilliance, no miracle, no outside rescue. What held them together was simpler and harder than any of that. It was routine, it was dignity, and it was trust. The Endurance sank into the Weddell Sea in November 1915. She is still there, 2 miles beneath the surface, largely intact, preserved by the cold and the dark. In 2022, explorers found her on the seafloor. Still recognizable, her name still visible on the stern. The name survived, and so did the men who sailed on her. Leadership is not about having all the answers. It is about making sure the people around you never stop believing that answers exist. That is not a small thing. In the places where hope runs out, it may be the only thing.